Hi everybody, this is Dr. Serge from Houston here. So I hope everybody's doing okay. You may have heard that we got pretty bad winter storm here in this area. For days we didn't have any power, we didn't have any water, some issues. But everything is going back to normal, and there I am today. I'm back doing my Facebook Live. Today I wanted to talk about a question that a lot of people ask me: butter, cheese, dairy products. So, what do you think of that? Should we eat them? Should we avoid them? And specifically, I wanted to talk about butter because butter is one of those good fat that we used to consume. But back in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, we started to see an increase in heart disease, and then we started to recommend to avoid butter and cheese and all those foods that have a high content of saturated fat. And butter is one of those foods that it just tastes good, when you eat it. So I wanted to specifically cover that. And I came across this article a little while ago when I was reading on butter, dairy products. And I was surprised to see that from these articles that the American consumptions reaches the all-time highs when it comes to cheese, butter, and yogurts. As we can see from these numbers, the data, this graph, we can see for the last 10, 15 years, we've been consuming more dairy products. We've heard a lot more about eating yogurt, for example, or good probiotics. A lot of this drive is because of yogurt, cheese, and butter. So this is really interesting that we are going back eating those products for like I said, for decades. We've been told to avoid them because they are bad for us. At least that's what they say. So I have a few things to say about this. Yes, there's an increase of dairy product consumption. It's a bad thing to me. I'm not a fan of those products at the end of the day, for the simple reason that most of those products we find in this country are all made from the wrong type of milk. You may know there's two different types of milk products, the A1 type of milk and the A2. So in this country, we mostly find A2 milks from the cows that we use to make to produce milk. And the A1 milk is the one actually that is connected, associated with chronic issues, heart disease, cancer, diabetes, obesity, autism. So that's why I'm a little bit concerned to see an increase of the consumption of those products in this country. Is that a factor driving obesity, diabetes, cancer? Maybe there's some indication that maybe they are causing or at least associated with those conditions. So to me, that's concerning. On the other side, when you consume the A2 milk, this is the milk actually that has been shown to reverse like allergies, asthma, to help fighting heart disease, to help fighting diabetes, obesity, and so on and so on. So the A2 milk is mostly found in Europe. So those are European countries like Paris, Italy, Spain. They usually use A2 milk. So my point of that is products from those countries, from Europe, it's typically safer and better for you. So if you continue scrolling down this article, we can see here a drastic increase of cheese consumption. It has more than doubled the last 30 years. Okay, so people have been eating more cheese. Again, I'm concerned because most of the cheeses we find is A1 milk. So if you do consume cheese, make sure that it's from A2 milk. You can find this type of cheese from farmers and cheese producers here in this country. Farmers markets, for example, we have those. Cheeses from France, Italy, like those countries. Make sure you get those. And most of the time, those cheeses as well are not pasteurized. So that's another factor to consider in when you consume cheese is most of the cheeses are pasteurized. So we know that pasteurization kills the nutrition. It destroys the structure of the milk, the nutritional value of the cheese, which make it toxic actually. So that's why I'm not a big fan for people to eat pasteurized cheese. So make sure that your cheese is raw, non-pasteurized, non-processed, and is from A2 milk. And most of the time when it's raw milk cheese, it's from A2 milk. Okay, so the last graph I wanted to show you is the butter. Again, the same situation is going on. So the butter consumption has been increased almost 50% the last 10, 15 years. So people are going back using butter as a source of fat. Okay, so this is my point of today's life is butter. Okay, butter, we've been told butter is bad and so on and so on. So I wanted to show you this graph. We can see here. So they compare in this graph the consumption of butter as opposed to margarine. We've been told in the 40s, 50s, and 60s to replace butter with margarine, for example. Margarine is a processed fat, is actually a highly processed fat. It's a fake fat to me. Some people say it's one step away from plastic. Because it's made in the lab, it's made by us human, so it's not a natural fat. And margarine is the main source of trans fat. Okay, Crisco, for example, is the most common margarine that people use. There's other types of margarine. So margarine today, even today, contains trans fat, even though it says it's 0% trans fat or 0 gram of trans fat. It still contains trace amount of trans fat. By the law, if it's below 0.5 gram of trans fat, they can claim on the container, on the tables, that it's 0 trans fat. But that's really misleading. That's actually a lie. So all margarines today contain trans fat per the nature of the way they are made. And trans fat, there's no safe amount of trans fat. A little bit of trans fat in your diet, it's toxic. Trans fat is the main cause of heart disease, okay, of clogged arteries. Years ago, about 20 years ago, some doctors extracted plaques, those clogged arteries from people who had heart attacks, and they analyzed the content on those plaques. And 60% of those plaques were actually made of trans fat. We know trans fat today is the main driver of heart disease, plaques, clogged arteries. It's the main factor of cancer, diabetes, fatty liver, obesity, insulin resistance. All those can be connected to trans fat. And margarine is the main source of trans fat today. Okay, of course, if you eat fried food in restaurants, so most likely they still use a fat like soybean oil or canola oil or cottonseed oil that could contain potentially trans fat. So still today, the American use or consume way too much trans fat. And trans fat is the main factor causing heart disease. As you can see in this graph, the consumption of margarine has been increasing, right, until the 1990s. And then it's been declining because we've been realizing that it's toxic for us. But the interesting part is the blue. Okay, the blue line is the consumption of butter. For the last 60, 70 years, the consumption of butter has been declining drastically 3 or 4 times. Even though we've been eating much less butter, we've been seeing a lot more heart disease, a lot more cancer, a lot more obesity, a lot more diabetes and fatty liver and so on and so on. So if butter was actually causing all those issues, we should have seen a decline, not an increase. So my point of that is we have to use some common sense. So butter is actually not good for you. And even though we eat less, we have more issues. Same thing as cheese and milk. We have to make sure that your butter is from A2 milk. One of the best butter that we can find here is the Kerrygold. Okay, Kerrygold, the Irish butter. It's organic, grass-fed, A2 type butter. So it's one of the best butter you can get. If you cannot do butter, you can do ghee. ghee, the clarified butter. So ghee may be better actually because there's no protein in it. So it's 100% fat. And this is personally what I use for cooking or frying. I use ghee or coconut oil as my sources of fat for cooking. So at the end of the day, don't be stressed with butter. Butter is healthy for you. Every morning, I have my bulletproof coffee. I have my coffee with coconut and butter. This is the way I start my day. So good, healthy fat to nourish the brain, to nourish your body, your energy. And when I do that, actually, I don't eat for hours. I have so much energy. You feel energetic, you feel sharp, you feel focused. So this is what I recommend to do. Eat your butter to nourish your brain, to nourish your body. Good, healthy fats. Okay. If you have any questions, let me know. Thank you for watching tonight. God bless you all.